Hello, and welcome to Nostalgia Marcana. I'm your host, Doug Leaf. Each episode of this podcast, we'll look back on the movies, TV, games, people, and phenomena that we still love talking about all these years later, and ask ourselves why these bits of pop culture still enchant us today. This week, we'll be revisiting... If you asked me what the first Tom Cruise movie we were going to do on this podcast was, this movie would not have been on my lotto ticket. I would have assumed it was going to be Top Gun or maybe Interview with a Vampire, but I'm very glad we're actually starting off our look back at Tom Cruise stuff, and I'm sure there will be more Tom Cruise movies to come, with Legend. A legendary movie whose legend is the stuff of legend. I'm really glad to talk about this because I love 80s fantasy, and this is like a prime example of 80s fantasy stuff. And to help me do it, I have two returning guests I'm very glad to have back on the podcast because it's been a minute. Please welcome back to the show, Dave and Jala Prendes. Hello, guys.
Woo! Hey!
Yeah, we're here. We're Tom Cruised up.
We're on cruise control. Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Well, we'll get all the Tom Cruise jokes in. So, guys, before we get rock and rolling on Legend, tell the folks out there about the cool podcast you guys do.
Sure. Dave, how about you kick it off?
Sure. I host Monster Dear Monster, and basically the podcast is our take on looking at monsters from their incarnations to their current pop culture movies and films. So we look at them from their original folklore books and anything that we can find to what they look like now. And that's going from, say, Bram Stoker's Dracula to the diamond shining Twilight vampires and everything in between.
Awesome.
Yeah, you also have like a film club, MDM Presents going on as well.
We kicked off MDM Presents. So basically these are tangential subject matters that some of it has been horror authors or just books and things that I find are cool. And I try to get a hold of people to talk about. There's been some music chat authors. And then the film club itself is a few like-minded individuals that I've known for years back in like Twitter days that love niche films and subgenres. So we take a look at some kung fu things, some Italian 70s cinema, and some old samurai chanbara films. So just a lot of fun. We'll pick like a movie a month and just kind of really dig into it.
Awesome. Jala, how about you?
Yeah, so I host Jala-Chan Place, which is a variety podcast. Usually it's bi-weekly, but I've had a lot of stuff going on this year, and I had to cut it back to monthly at this particular moment, but it will be returning to its bi-weekly format in 2026. The most recent stuff that would be out by the time this has come, I don't know when this is going to be released, but as of the time we're recording anyway, will be Nosferatu, talking about the 2024 film and how it compares to the original 1922 film. And then Dave will be having on Monster Dear Monster and another version of Nosferatu that they're going to be talking about as well, kind of like piggybacking off each other. But then after that, I also have Frankenstein the novel, followed by 2 episodes on Frankenstein, the new Guillermo del Toro movie. Lots and lots of media. Usually I go between life topic stuff and then media stuff, but like with the trials and travails I've been dealing with this year, the topics have been set to the side for the time being until I can get back to those and have presence of mind for that kind of show. So there's that. And then I'm also on the Level podcast from Duckfeed TV talking about video games. It's a video game roundtable show. We talk news, what we've been playing, and then throw out questions to the listeners. And so I pop up on there kind of at random whenever somebody else isn't able to be on. So you can catch me there on duckfeed.tv. That's the URL for that. Jala-Chan's Place is jala-chan.place.
There you go. I'm happy to recommend all of those shows. They're all very, very good. And I'm now that you said you're doing some Nosferatu stuff, my ears are kind of pricked up because that silent movie still holds up. It's still real creepy and good. Are you going to cover was it Shadow of the Vampire, the one with Willem Dafoe?
That was the one with Willem Dafoe. We talk about it just a little tiny smidge on the episode coming up for us on JCP. I don't know if we're going to cover it on the show at some juncture or not. If so, it'll be like sometime in the future, not right away. But yeah, I've entered like the gothic romantic horror phase of everything is, you know, I mean, like I was already there sort of with the Phantom of the Opera stuff that I've been doing in the past. So, but Dave and I had the privilege of going to see the original Nosferatu movie live with organ accompaniment from the Houston Symphony here just like a couple of weeks ago. So cool. That is what prompted us to then talk about the movie, which we both rather enjoyed. And then, you know, like the Robert Eggers iteration of it, which kind of expounds and expands that storyline. Very cool. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to those, but I'm also really looking forward to talking about Legend. So, right. Let's start where we always start. This was Jolly. You wanted to bring this to the show, so tell me your nostalgic memories of Legend and why you wanted to talk about it today. Right. So this is one of the movies from my childhood, which kind of defines who I am as a person. You've got the Superman stuff, you know, like Chris Reeves' Superman stuff. You've got Flight of Dragons, which is another one I've pitched to you, which I'm sure will eventually be talked about. And then there's Legend. And those are like three movies that I saw at a very young age, which kind of shaped who I am as a person. And when I say Legend, understand that there are two versions of this movie, and they are very different from one another. Completely, like the way that they actively cut the original version, which is now called the director's cut, down to what became the U.S. version, U.S. theatrical. The way they did that is an exercise in propaganda making. And we'll get into why I say that later on. But like when I was growing up, the U.S. version was what I watched because that was what was available. And I watched it over and over again. The soundtrack by Tangerine Dream is fantastic. I was very into fantasy stuff in the 80s. So, you know, this is fantasy, high fantasy stuff. Absolutely into that. Who doesn't love Tim Curry as Darkness? Like, he's amazing. And like he had a lot of stuff a lot of challenges in this role, which made this actually one that he really hated doing because of those challenges. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, as well when we're talking about the rest of it. But like, again, like this kind of shaped part of who I am as a person, the whole concept of, you know, light and dark and these things being part and parcel of each person. And you can't get rid of one because they are necessary to each other to define each other. So Dave, how about you?
Yeah, I grew up watching this as well, where I'm pretty sure we like wore out our copy of like the VHS tape. We may have had this on beta. I don't remember. But this, along with a few of the other seminal classics like Willow and I don't want to say...
Oh my God, Conan. Conan is for both of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then for me, I would watch The Last Unicorn like ad nauseum, as well as The Hobbit. So somehow between this and Last Unicorn, I don't know how I didn't grow up like, I love unicorns and horses. Instead, I was like, no, I love weird little goblins. That's what I keyed in on. And I think that may have been part of Legend, and then me just really, really watching the crap out of Labyrinth.
Oh, but this movie features a goblin who is winning. Blix wins, and we'll get into that too.
Yeah, this was a blind spot for me. I hadn't seen it. As much as I love 80s fantasy, I just kind of knew it was out there, it existed. But what this reminded me of, when I watched it was, many of the things you just mentioned, right? Especially Willow and the never-ending story. Really, I think, especially in terms of like visually, this and Neverending Story have a lot in common in terms of their aesthetics. So I was like, oh, this is my happy place. I'm very happy to watch this. I'm glad you mentioned the thing about the two different cuts in the movie, because we'll have to get into that. I only watched the original U.S. theatrical cut because that was on Prime for free and easy to get to. So that's what we're going to kind of walk through that during the recap part. But I really want you to help tell me where this deviates, because this, I don't want to say this felt incomplete, but there was like, you could feel this had been cut. Like there was stuff where I was like, this, things haven't been laid out or explained, or something's like, I just felt like there's got to be more, scenes or stuff, because I won't say it's incoherent, but there's definitely stuff where I felt like I felt adrift trying to figure out what was going on or what these characters were about.
Right. And we will absolutely be piping up and talking about like what are the differences as we go through the narrative and everything. So that'll be something you can look forward to. But when you're talking about visuals, I just have to ask, how many dump trucks full of glitter do you think they used for this movie?
And pollen.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like the cinematography for this movie. I mean, look, it's a Ridley Scott movie. It's going to look good. Ridley Scott is probably one of the best visual directors of all time. And the visuals here are really stellar, especially the scenes like kind of that bookend the movie where things are kind of lighter. Like the FromSoft game that is this movie. Like just the level of crazy detail and just the sharpness, the way the colors pop, everything about the look of this is just dazzling.
So can I talk to you a little bit about a set, or do you want me to just put that in later when we get there? Okay. So the parts you're talking about are the parts that take part in the forest. The forest was built on like a stage in a studio, and that was 100% in a studio. And it was so loud in there that they had to redub everything in the forest because of all the birds and stuff they had in there. And it ended up burning down, actually. Like the whole building went up. It lit up because something caught fire on the set. And, like all the birds escaped and everything. But like I think it was like after they had already filmed what they needed to film. So it was okay. I mean, in terms of the movie production. But yeah, it was this whole thing. Do you remember any other details about that, Dave?
I think it was a part of the light rigging caught fire up in the top, and the whole place is mostly styrofoam, so it just went up. And that's something that holds true with a few of the similar feeling movies as far as like the visual look around that same time. Was a lot of it was done on sound stages, so you have that intimate control over lighting and the quote unquote weather. You don't have to fight against the elements with that. Although I believe it was still pretty cold for the actors. Like there's moments where you think, oh, it's nice and clear, and then you can definitely see like their breath coming out when it wasn't supposed to be a cold scene.
Right. So,
yeah, I mean, the visuals of the dark parts of the movie, which is kind of the middle, most of it, are also very good. The snowy parts, and I think this is just something that's just, as you said, because of the studio production at the time, right? This is all there's a handcrafted look to all this that today this would have all been just CGI in an empty volume. I love this so much more. Like there's just something tactile to it. But it's still unnatural, but in a way that's not like, oh, this feels fake. It's in a way that feels like storybook and heightened to me.
And what's really kind of interesting too is that when they were doing the U.S. cut, not only did they cut out like scenes, and redub certain parts so that it flowed better with what they were doing on the cut version, but they also like actively took out different stuff, like in the part where Jack and Lily are there and seeing a unicorn. We already mentioned there's a unicorn, so that's not a spoiler. But like when they're looking at the unicorn, there's white lilies right in front, like on the nose, like there's white lilies right in front, and Jack picks one and hands it to Lily in the director's cut, and that's like the lilies aren't even there in like the US version. And then there's like other elements where there's like monks, dark monks in another scene later, and like those don't exist, like you don't even see them in the US version at all. So like it's kind of wild, some of the stuff that they took out, like they actively cut entire characters out in like background. So
yeah, I kind of got the feel they did this with like the Dark Crystal, where you get what you get in the movies, but then you get like, I don't know, comic books and things that expand the lore. Like this feels like there's background lore that it would be helpful to know. And I realize there's probably more in stuff in the director's cut, but even beyond that, like it just feels like this world. I mean, Ridley Scott, the creators of the movie, must have had some of this background stuff in mind as they were going. It's just not all on screen.
Right. Well, and then one of the things I wanted to mention too, before we get into the nitty gritty, is that this film originally, Ridley Scott was considering making it a dark horror fantasy, which you can see elements of very clearly when you're watching. And we can get into a little bit later about like some of the stuff that was in the original screenplay that got cut before they got to production, and how vastly different that movie would have been from, either version that we've got. But then it like transmogrified from a dark horror into sort of a suspense movie kind of thing. And then it distilled down into what we have, which is more of like a fantasy adventure, canned fantasy adventure type thing, which is, what was so popular in the 80s. So,
yeah, I saw that Ridley Scott had been working on this for a long time. Like he conceived of this before making Alien, which was 1979. Yeah. So he had this in mind before Alien, before Blade Runner, right? Like, so this has been kind of gestating for a while before we got the final thing. So I'd be very, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And then also, Dave, you had commented something about the person who did the screenplay.
Yeah, so the screenplay in this was done by William Hjortsberg, who wrote the novel that the film Angel Heart is based on, and that novel it's a little bit darker than the actual movie that did come out, but there's parallels in the original screenplay for Legend, and then some of the themes that crop up in Angel Heart, where that movie is like a hard R, not a fantasy movie. Well, it's a supernatural movie instead of fantasy.
You also mentioned Jala, the score by Tangerine Dream, which is awesome. But there's a second score to this movie.
Yes, and it's very weird because like the director's cut score, it's serviceable and it works for the overall, like what they're doing with the overall story, but it's not memorable. And that's kind of wild because that composer has done like tons and tons of work, but this one just does not really stand out at all.
It's Jerry Goldsmith.
Yeah. And like he's a seasoned, musician, but for some reason the soundtrack for the director's cut just doesn't really stand out. It doesn't really do anywhere near the kind of heavy lifting that Tangerine Dream soundtrack does. And the Tangerine Dream had made that soundtrack like on a short turnaround too, which is wild.
Yeah, I mean, not only was the turnaround short for that, but they're all memorable songs or background music that you can probably hum the tunes to, whereas that's not the case with the director's cut score. Goldsmith's score is the purpose that it serves is different than what the Tangerine Dreams score serves. In the director's cut, the music it's set dressing. It serves the same as all the glitter. It's the thing that's just in the background, kind of setting the stage, but it's not driving emotional beats in the same way that the Tangerine Dreams soundtrack does. It doesn't function. So if you listen to, say, Blade Runner or Legend, or I had another one on top of my head that had really there's a lot of main themes and leitmotifs that those films have, or I guess a really big one would be The Last Unicorn, that America did the soundtrack for that, and like I know all the songs and I know the beats that happen in the movie when that's going on. So that's what the Tangerine Dream score does, is it sells emotion, and it paints on like a nostalgia or a feel good to this film, in a way that I don't know. It's harder to be objective and go, does the movie really deserve that? Is that the emotions? So the counterpoint to that is going back and watching the film Neverending Story, which holds a big place in a lot of anyone growing up in the 80s, like that has a big place in their heart. And then if you go back and watch that objectively, like if you haven't seen that in a while, there's a lot of key moments that are only driven by the music. And if you watch it, like just turn the sound down and have the subtitles on, you're like, oh, that happened, I guess. Whereas if you watch it with the music, you're just getting carried away by the song or the sound of it.
Artax.
Versus, yes, the whole scene with Artax is an undeserved sadness, like you're being played by the soundtrack versus anything else that's actually occurring in the movie. And so to come back to Legend, there's a lot of big key driving moments that they don't hit the same way in the director's cut, because it's using this like subdued, just kind of generic fantasy score, which isn't a bad thing, because what that does is in the director's cut gives space for the film to speak for itself outside of just this artificial score. There's more nuance, there's more going on with the characters. You have to pay attention to that instead of being blasted away by this Tangerine Dream score, which it's a great score, but it's doing a lot of heavy lifting to craft a different sort of movie.
Yeah, I loved the score for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. The Tangerine Dream one. I have a playlist of fantasy stuff. I threw this in there immediately after watching the movie. And there's something about this weird combination of like synth instruments, because that's what this is. It's a very synth heavy score with high fantasy, which you'd normally associate with flutes and mandolins and stuff. And again, we can rattle off a list of 80s fantasy movies that use this, and I don't think we'll get it again anytime soon. It's a neat blending of things that this electronic sound shouldn't work, but it definitely does. Let me move on to the cast for a bit here, because again, Tom Cruise as our lead. He was not quite a household name. He had Risky Business was before this, but his next film after this was Top Gun, which put him into the stratosphere, literally and figuratively. So it's interesting to see him here, so young, so different. You've got Sara, who most people know from Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She's the girlfriend in that. And then, of course, an unrecognizable Tim Curry under 3.5 tons of makeup.
Right. And the wild thing is that makeup actually, I say only because like I'll tell you the rest here. So it only took 5.5 hours to apply the makeup to Tim Curry. In the Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, which of course I'm going to be talking about on my show in a little bit, a few months or whatever. It's like the creature, Jacob Elordi's makeup for that took 10 hours to apply, because it's his entire body, like has to have paint, not just the appliques and everything, all the prostheses, but like the paint job on his entire body to do that. So, but Tim Curry, I'll go ahead and tell you this here. Tim Curry, about his outfit. He was super claustrophobic in it, to the point that like he got impatient at one point and tore all of everything off, all the prostheses and stuff off, before getting the spirit gum removed off of it, because he just wanted it off, and he tore all of his skin. And then Ridley Scott had to then like shoot around him for a week so his skin could heal, so he could put the makeup back on and do the next scene. He also had like 18-inch platforms, because he had to be 7'3", which is what darkness is in this movie. So he had massive platforms, and they had to hide that. That's why you only really see darkness from like the waist up most of the time. So
yeah, I mean, it's impressive. I mean, think like he's basically Satan from South Park if he worked out. more.
Right.
So it's huge. It's red. I mean, the horns, just the size of them is enormous. Like, it's
and
incredible. How much do
the
those things
horns.
weigh?
That's the thing, is that the various iterations, they had to go through so many different iterations of those horns because they were straining the back of his neck with how heavy they were. And so they just tried different designs because they were frontal horns. Like, that was pulling so much on his neck that they had to go through several iterations until they found a light enough weight version, which if you're watching the movie, you can see when he's running and like the stunt double has the horns on and he's running and stuff. They're flopping around a little bit and everything because like they had to be light enough that they wouldn't murder and permanently damage these actors' necks and stuff, So yeah, but like, Tim Curry, he's got a bodysuit of like muscles on him all over his body. He's got elongated fingers and huge fingernails. He's got like this whole headpiece that's like a mask over his eyes and then a chin extension and all of this. So like, Tim Curry as an actor does so much with his face, and he had restrictions, massive restrictions on how he could act his part, because he couldn't use his forehead or around his eyes because that was all covered. His chin and this whole area was covered, so he couldn't, like do anything that did that. So his mouth does overtime work here, as does his voice. He is doing a lot of heavy lifting with his voice, and then his mouth, if you watch his mouth, is way more pronounced in how he speaks his words. He's enunciating very much, exaggeratedly, because that's the only thing he could do to express what was going on as an actor. It's stuck in this massive suit,
I mean, if you want someone to do that, Tim Curry's the right guy for the job.
Right.
And the makeup here is Rob Bottin, who's just a master. We've talked about him on the podcast many times. RoboCop, Total Recall, The Thing. He's just a master at doing this stuff. So
right, like the nominations that this movie got for awards and stuff were all related to the makeup. So,
well, let's do it. Let's get into this thing because so this is another movie. It starts with a crawl. I can't play a clip of this, so I wrote the whole thing down because there's a lot of stuff in here. This is really dense and long.
The crawl doesn't exist in the director's cut at all.
I had
because
a suspicion.
there is an elongated scene with darkness, but we'll get there. Go ahead and tell the crawl first, because I memorized this, and I used to read it, like to say it every time it was on the screen. I would read it aloud, like in this passionate voice, like little Jala was just like in front of the screen, because the music as this starts up is so good.
Well, I will try to do my best to do this justice, Jala, as my my monologue.
I think
piece
I
here.
actually, I have it all. I have it all written down.
Would you like to do it?
I do. I can read it. I don't know that I'm going to do it nearly as passionately as I did as a small child, because it's been many years since I spoke it out loud. But once long ago, before there was such a thing as time, the world was shrouded in darkness. Then came the splendor of light, bringing life and love into the universe, and the Lord of Darkness retreated deep into the shadows of the earth, plotting his return to power by banishing light forever. But precious light is protected, harbored in the souls of unicorns, the most mystical of all creatures. Unicorns are safe from the Lord of Darkness. They can only be found by the purest of mortals. Such a mortal is Jack, who lives in solitude with the animals of the forest. A beautiful girl named Lily loves Jack with all her heart. In their innocence, they believe only good exists in the world. Together, they will learn there can be no good without evil, no love without hate, no heaven without hell, no light without darkness. The harmony of the universe depends upon an eternal balance. Out of the struggle to maintain this balance comes the birth of legends.
Nice. Okay, so tell me what's in the movie, in the director's cut, in place of that text.
Ain't none of that. But actually, I'll let Dave say it because I've been talking a minute.
Sure.
Okay, so the movie kicks off instead with a protracted scene of darkness in kind of conference with his top general goblin Blix, and we don't get it's a fun over the shoulder, not show the creature moment because we don't see darkness in this. We just see
It's a big fancy chair.
It's his chair and his hand. And then we're getting basically, we're seeing Blix talking and kind of coming in and like genuflecting and just being as humble as you can while still being a little nasty goblin, and is tasked by darkness to search and basically kill these two unicorns that have appeared nearby, and he hasn't the presence he hasn't sensed in ages.
And this was a change because there is a deleted scene wherein Blix and their crew of goblins, and I'm not entirely certain what Blix's gender is, that's why I say they. Blix is played by a woman in terms of the voice, but then is told by darkness that they will become a prince, so I don't know. But anyway, so in either case, there's a deleted scene where Blix and their goblin cohorts end up finding a unicorn hair in the forest. And Blunder, who is one of the goblins that has this mask on, hands that hair to Darkness, and then his hand turns into like this critter hand. And you see that in the movie, which you might have noticed, Doug, that Blunder, you find out later who that character is, and that he has like this hand that's goblinized and looks kind of like a chicken foot or something. Some kind of weird three-toed claw thing. And that happens in a deleted scene we don't get, we're not privy to, but that's how Darkness knows that there are unicorns. It's not him sensing a presence out of nowhere. It's actually like the goblins found a unicorn hair and brought that to Darkness, and that's how he knows.
That makes sense because I remember seeing his hand, and I just chalked it up to like fantasy weirdness because there's another goblin that's basically a little pig man. And so I was just like, all right, yeah, there's weirdos. There's just weirdos in this world. That's fine. I accept that.
Right.
And yeah, the goblins here, the goblin-y goblins are pretty much like picture like a cross between like Lord of the Rings orcs and say like Labyrinth goblins. They're a little more whimsical than the Lord of the Rings ones, and they're short, more like Labyrinth goblins. So they're somewhere in between those two designs.
But Blix was designed to look like Keith Richards, which is so good.
To add to the growing number of like fictional characters based around Keith Richards.
Right. And I have to say too, what I really love about the goblins in this movie is that they are potent forces. They are not like goofy little weirdos. I mean, they are goofy, but they're like also serious at the same time. Like they are a force to be reckoned with in here. And they have a lot of agency and everything. They're not like, idiot level 1 characters that you have to fight, right?
Yeah, like the goblins in Labyrinth they're comic relief. They're ineffectual, right? That's the point of them. All right, so then I'm going to assume the next scene is this, what we open on in the theatrical, which is just darkness in the forest. Not the character darkness, it's a dark night in the forest, and there's wildlife about. And we see this giant tree, which I love these, long shots of this enormous fantasy tree, but there's like one lit window inside, and like there's just like great scene setting stuff. There's like a whole, what looks like an orc on a table, just being hacked to bits, like just darkness stuff. And we see the Lord of Darkness himself, and this is we don't really get the full measure of him. He's in the darkness, and his like eyeballs and his fingernails, his claws are like glowing day-glow green.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, blacklight stuff.
They don't show that in the director's cut at all. Like you don't see any of his face at all. You just see from behind. So they're hiding the monster in the director's cut.
Yeah, and this is where we get this, like, I sense Blix reports unicorns, and Darkness talks about, I sense their presence. And he commands them, bring me the horns. And they don't know, how are we going to get a hold of these unicorns? And they say, you need innocence for bait.
Ah, Blix, come closer.
You summoned me, Lordship.
Are you not the most loathsome of my goblins?
Truly, Master.
And is your heart black and full of hate?
Black as midnight, black as pitch. blacker than the foulest witch.
That is why I have called you here. Since I must remain in darkness, you shall be my eyes and
You
ears.
do me great honor, Lord.
Something troubles me. I feel a presence in the forest. A force I had mercifully almost forgotten.
Must be dread indeed to trouble you, Lordship.
Looking upon these frail creatures, one would not think that they could contain such power. One could rule the universe with it. You must find them for me and destroy them.
What do they look like, Lord?
Fool! Let this serve to remind you. They are each crowned with a single horn reaching straight to heaven.
I get the point, Lord.
Cut to some innocence. And this is where we see Lily, our heroine, played by Mia Sara, traipsing through this idyllic field of like just flowers and trees and again, all the pollen in the world.
Right. If you have any allergies, you won't be able to breathe. Right. That scene with Lily is a little bit extended in the director's cut, but it has room for her to do a lot of singing because there is a song that kind of keeps coming back throughout the narrative in the director's cut that I don't think you get at all in the US version. So there's that. And then as you kind of segue into the next section with Lily, there's some character moments that I'll mention when we get there.
Yeah, she does it's kind of a dick move. She there's this woman, we don't know her name yet, but she's drying clothes on a clothesline, and Lily basically disconnects that so that the clothes all fall down and runs away. It's that seemed unnecessary.
So, and that's because in the original version, Lily is a dick character. She is selfish, she is manipulative, and she is greedy. And she is a princess instead of a lady, which is what she is in the US version. The US version says she's a lady. She is a princess Lily in the director's cut, so she doesn't have any idea of the struggles of the common man or anything like that, and she just does what she wants. So she just bursts into this peasant's house and starts eating their food. You also get additional characters in the director's cut that you don't even see. They're non-speaking characters, but they're there for development of Nell, who is the lady doing the clothes washing. There's her husband and also a little baby. Oh. And the baby comes up later in the thing. You see the crib for the baby rocking back and forth briefly in the US version, but there's a little bit more to that when we get to that point. Anyway, Lily just comes in and starts helping herself to all of their food and stuff. She doesn't have food back in the castle that she lives in. And not only that, but in the director's cut, she also steals some of that, takes some of it and is carrying it with her, when she's doing her thing. There's also a redub where at the point where Lily pulls down that line in the UK version / director's cut, it's bloomin' fairies, she's mad. And then in the US version, it's bloomin' fairies. And it's just a redub, but it makes her less angry because in the US version, Lily isn't a selfish, horrible, bitch of a character, basically. So...
Yeah, I like that. There's a couple interesting things that happen when she goes in. Yeah, I noticed that. I first assumed maybe she lives here. I wasn't sure because she was just taking food, she lives here. And then she watches this cuckoo clock and these figures. It's a woman, and then she's sort of being pursued
by death.
As a death or a skeleton. Yeah, and she has a vision of it covered in ice for a brief moment. And then this woman, Nell, tells her, "Oh, she's got a visitor. She needs to go to the woods, and you should be behaving like a lady and not hanging out with the peasants or whatever." And she's, you can tell Lily likes spending time with these people. At least in the U.S. version, she's, she's happy. She's in her happy place, hanging out over here, not wherever she's from.
Right. Well, she says something to that same effect in the director's cut, but Nell also says, you need to be going and looking for your prince on a white charger, not hanging out with us. And so they're setting it up you need to be getting married or something, trying to, push that ideal of, oh, she's a young princess she's not married yet, but she needs to be, because that's going to be coming up here soon. And that's like a big plot point that goes in a very different direction in the director's cut to the version that you have in the US.
Yeah, and Nell warns her off of make sure you look out for rings of mushrooms and fantasy
Spriggan and Banshee, yeah.
Right. And so she goes into the woods and she starts calling for Jack while Blix and company are kind of spying on her. And there's no answer, but then eventually Jack jumps down out of whatever tree he's in. And it's Link and Zelda here in the forest.
Good. Very good. Just right.
Jack, tell me our future.
Not today.
Why not?
Because... there's something really special that I've been promising to show you. Always go now, because I'll only be here for a short while.
Don't you trust me?
I trust you, Lily.
And I had a question because I didn't know. I don't think the movie really tells us. What is Jack?
Oh, I've got a lot to tell you about that, and it's different in both versions.
Yeah.
So first off, Link and Zelda, glad you mentioned that because it's not confirmed, but it is highly, like a lot of people suspect that this was one of the big influences for what became Legend of Zelda after this. So.
Because I think they're the same year, but they're both 1986.
Yeah, but it came out like around, in the same time frame and everything, and like the turnaround, the development time for games was way shorter back then. So, but also it came out in like other places in the world, not the US, in 85. So it was out earlier than that elsewhere. So anyway, so Jack. In the US version, he's just child of the forest, and he is set up in that text crawl as a mortal, right? So in the director's cut, he is Jack O'Green. He is a young version of the Green Man, and he is immortal. He's somewhere between like a human and a fae, like one of the fae folk. So he's not quite fae where he's well versed with all the fae and he already knows them or anything, but he's also not quite human. And so, he's Green Man, essentially.
Yeah, that's what I got. Like, I got the sense that that's what he was. Not specifically the Green Man, but like I looked up on Wikipedia as well and saw Jack of the Green. I'm like, okay, interesting. Because that's how he behaves. He behaves very, innocent and kind of unaware of humans and their... Otherwise, yeah, it's very strange for this guy to just be living out there alone by himself, acting this way.
And it's really important to his character that he is this innocent because, as I mentioned before, Lily is extremely manipulative in the director's cut. And because he is so innocent, he is 100% pliable to everything that she is trying to do. And he just believes her all the time. That
seems like it would go against the grain of the love story they're trying to tell. If she's not very nice.
But it's not a love story in the in the director's cut. It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't end the way that you're expecting it to.
Interesting. Yeah, they definitely changed it a lot then to make it a more traditional, romance between them.
Yep.
And there's these interesting shots too of like just clouds that they use, like these time lapse shots from time to time. I wrote them down in my notes as screensaver, but like they're really just like very 80s fantasy stuff. But it's like it's a good way for them to as this shorthand of like, okay,
time is passing, right? Yeah. And so I also have to say that Jack is way more horny and way hornier in the director's cut because like she gives him the stuff that she stole from Nell's house and is like, here, I made that for you. And then after a second, she's like, actually, I took it from Nell. And then he's like, oh, he's eating it. And then she's like, oh, well, is it sweet? And he's like, I know something sweeter. And then he starts like going after her, and then they're like running and then, eventually they kiss or whatever. So, I mean, like it's a different kind of setup that they're doing here. It's not so innocent.
Gotcha. So yeah, Dave, tell me like your thoughts on like kind of this opening meeting of these characters. Like, how do you feel? Which one do you like better, the director's cut or the theatrical?
Because of the themes are a little more nuanced in the director's cut. I enjoy that as the through line to the movie. It's a different message. You're right in that the U.S. version is specifically, it's that like boilerplate fantasy story. It's couched in easy to read and easy to understand motifs. Like you're not having to reach for any messages, not having to like really go beneath the surface too much because Tangerine Dream is there to take you on a journey. So primarily because of the soundtrack, I have more of a soft spot for the original film, but that also means I can just
the cut, not the original.
Yeah, the U.S. cut. So, in that instance, I could just listen to the soundtrack, and the movie will just kind of play in my head, and I'm like, okay, that's all I needed. But if I want to sit down and watch the movie, I would watch the director's cut.
Gotcha. Well, Jack says he's got something to show Lily, and he blindfolds her and leads her to a creek. Where there are unicorns, or as the goblins call them, an ugly one-horned mule, I think one of them calls it. And they talk about, as long as they roam the earth, evil can never harm the pure of heart. She asks Jack if he can speak their language, and which again, he must be something other than human if he can talk to animals and creatures.
There's a whole setup right before that, Dave. You want to talk about it?
Sure. When they first meet back up together and during I think maybe it's before the cookie debacle, they're sitting and Jack has like a little fox in his lap and Lily is holding a bird.
A sparrow.
A sparrow.
Okay.
And he's literally teaching her the language of the animals. So she's like talking to the sparrow and it flies off. And then she's begging him to teach her rabbit. And he's holding the fox, and he's like, why would I? That's weird. He's like, no, we're not going to, dear. That's a little bit advanced for you right now.
Well, and then he says no because he's got something to show her. And like we get in the U.S. version, you get her sitting there with the sparrow and everything and him holding the fox. But it cuts out all the dialogue and just immediately moves on from there. There's a part where she is shining her little trinkets and she's trying to tell him, she's trying to manipulate him into teaching her rabbit at that point in the director's cut. And she's like, let me dazzle you with my wisdom, and then dangles this little shiny thing in front of him. But like the words are cut out. Like you can see her mouth move, but the words are chopped off in the US version before they transition into the whole unicorn thing and talking about the language. But that was already set up previously. There's a lot of instances in this movie where the setup is gone in the US version. They just took it out. And so there's just these throwaway lines of, do you speak their language? And, no, that was already talked about. We already had that set up before.
Yeah, I think there was something in the theatrical cut where he's talking to a bird. And he's watching her kind of tame it, but it's not nearly as expanded on as what you're talking about.
There's no, he says, good, very good, just right. And that's it. That's all you get of that in the US version.
Right. So Lily decides she's got to touch it. I need to touch a unicorn, despite Jack's warnings not to. And the unicorn comes over to her, like they're very, very close to touching. But before she actually touches it, Blix shoots it with something.
And a poison stinger.
And they spook and run off.
Yeah. And
now, like, Jack is like, you did something forbidden, which technically she didn't. She just kind of got up close to it. And then, like, instead of the happy screensaver clouds, it's the bad screensaver clouds as, like, they roll in. And, like, unicorns are panicking, running. She apologizes and tries to kiss Jack. And he's like, I'm afraid you'll break my heart. And she's got a ring. And she says, I wish this was our wedding ring. And she tosses it down into this pool and says, whoever finds this ring, I'll marry. Like they're playing a game sort of. And he dives for it. But when he's under the water, like the darkness really rolls in and he comes up and like the water's frozen over him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a whole part underneath in that scene where he's like trying to break through the ice, and I'm sorry, you wouldn't punch through 6 inches of ice, but whatever, but in the director's cut, when she reaches out and tries to touch the unicorn spooks before getting hit with the stinger and is kind of circling around her because it senses the darkness nearby and is kind of trying to protect her from it, and that's how it ends up getting hit by the stinger, is because it's trying to protect goodness, right? Like trying to protect Lily or whatever, and then ends up getting hit with the stinger. And then Jack is way more furious. They still don't know that it's the goblins in the director's cut version, but like he's going on a little bit more, and he's like furious with her, and she manipulates him and talks him down, and then does that whole thing with the wedding ring basically to distract him from being mad at her. And then we go on from there.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. These really are two different movies.
I know. I told you they're totally different. And like, so something that Dave had mentioned about the ice when we were watching it is that he kind of wishes that the ice didn't happen and all this other stuff didn't happen until the unicorn horn was chopped off, because it's interspersed with, here's the situation and everything is starting to go weird in the forest, but also the goblins are approaching the unicorn who is downed by the poison stinger, and then the unicorn horn gets chopped off right at the same time that Jack is punching through the ice. And the thing about it is that, like, it's already been hit by the poison stinger. So, I mean, it's already down for the count. It's just the final blow to take that alicorn off.
Yeah, that does seem like a little bit of an editing miss, right? It would be cool,
Right.
like if the second the Blix chop the horn off, that's when sheet of ice goes over the pond and the world goes to snow.
It just makes more sense that way. I don't begrudge that they did it this way with this gradual, like if that's the sign of a unicorn dying and it's like partially freezing the world, but there's some things that you kind of do have to tell instead of just showing. And I think that that's one of them. Like that, it became part of the bit of jumble where you really have to start to make leaps and assumptions about what's going on rather than, oh, this is the hard and fast what's happening. And that's not always a bad thing. But when you're explaining a lot of other stuff and then you start, it becomes obvious when you're neglecting to explain something.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Lily is in trouble now. She is running through a world of ice. She runs back to the house where she was before to find the family frozen solid. And the goblins ride up on the house. So she goes to the second floor to hide. And we hear the goblins kind of just bickering. Mortal. They rhyme sometimes. They say things like "mortal world turned to ice. Here be goblin paradise."
Mm-hmm.
And,
it's very fun. I love Blix's lines because they're so easy to quote. Like you can just pop off with them because they're easy to remember. Mimetic because of that rhyme scheme that usually happens.
And I guess so. Blix has the horn, and the horn is more or less a magic wand.
Right.
Because like Blix uses it to like kind of magic the clock a little bit, and the others are kind of grousing with Blix about like, why do you get to hang on to this thing?
Right. And this is the part where the baby comes in more in the director's cut because the pig goblin, Pox, he looks at the baby and is like, oh, I love milk-fed meat, and like is fully intending, like talking about how he's going to eat this baby and prepare it and everything. And some of this other stuff. There's also like some other slight edits that they made on the US version to kind of like stop, like kill ugly one horn dead, not kill ugly one horn mule. They changed that line when they brought it over because they didn't want to double emphasize the killing part. They were trying to make it more of a PG-13 experience, not like, murdery murder. So, And Lily also, to me at least, in the director's cut, feels like she's way calmer about what's going on because she has more time on the screen of just watching, and like she's not freaking out every moment or anything like that. She's watching and then she's whatever. But like in the US version, it seems more harrowing of an experience for her. Like she's more terrified. It's like all of the scary parts, is what she's seeing before they ride out.
Yeah, generally she's pretty terrified. It makes sense,
right?
Given what's happening to her. So we get Jack. He's in the snow, elsewhere. He's looking for her. He's calling for her. And this, what looks like a sort of like a firefly, approaches him. He's asleep, like he's passed out at some point, and calls to him. And we get to meet the rest of our little fellowship here, which is Honeythorn Gump, which is a forest sprite kind of guy. Elfish, looks exactly like Frankie Muniz. I don't know why. Just every once in a while, DNA repeats. So,
Who are you?
You be a forest child and not know the gum?
Gump, is it?
Honeythorn Gump, at your service.
How did you know my name? Stop it! Go away!
I know everything, Jack. Yet I do not understand what has happened today. Suppose you tell me, Jack. You know these woods as well as any elf. Did you not see something odd today? Any strange spirits? Did nothing untoward happen?
I took Lily to see the unicorn.
You did what? Silence!
Oh, God, Gum. She touched him.
Touched it! A mortal laid hands on a unicorn! Jack!
Do you think you can upset the order of the universe and not pay the price?
We meant no wrong. I did it for Lily. I did it for love.
Love, you say? Well, love is another matter. Brown Tom! A toast to love.
And he's, I'm going to call him a he. He's dubbed over with a female voice, but it's clearly a male actor.
The female voice is the same voice that does Blix.
Yeah. So all ADR for Gump. And he's also, you took her to see the unicorns. You know, again, he's also very upset with this decision. And he says, Jack, by doing this, upset the order of the universe. And he says what he did for love. And in that case, it's time to toast for that with elderberry wine. And then up from the snow pops a coterie of what appear to be, I guess, dwarves.
Yeah. And so this scene is, again, way different in the director's cut. I'll actually let Dave talk about this, since monsters are his specialty. It's very much more the Fey folk, you know, the way that they are in Europe. But definitely you get a sense in this point in the director's cut of how strong and how wild these guys are.
So this scene here is probably a good, I don't know, like 3 minutes long. It's longer. And when they come upon, so Una tracks down Jack, and he's going to like hibernate or die. He's frozen like the Nell. So she raises up the power of his bonfire, and it wakens him up.
And we get to see her in human form.
Yes, she. That's
in both versions.
Yes. So she human forms for a little bit, or at least big sizes, and says to keep this a secret. She does. She repeats that later. And
yeah, think Tinkerbell.
Yes, the Julia Roberts version, or from Hook, I guess. But Gump shows up, and he has when he pops in, he has a violin, and he keeps like a bear threatening pose. He just stretches his chest out and makes himself look larger, even though he's a child size. But he's threatening. He does big eyes where he kind of shows most of the white of his eyes.
And boy, that stare.
And he does this. Yeah, he does this really good. He'll turn around and then turn his head back and then just stare sideways at Jack. I'm going to kill you. Because when he finds out what Jack did, he's like, it doesn't really matter if it's for love or what. Okay, that's great that you did that, but we've got to reckon with the mistake that you made, and you have to basically is you can't you can't do a bad thing without paying for it. And so here's your payment, Jack. You have to answer a riddle. And I'm going to ask you a question, and you have to answer it. And if you answer it correctly, we'll go on. We'll forgive you. We'll make merry, and we'll move on. If you don't, then it's going to be the dance of death, and you'll dance until you die, basically. So he pulls out his fiddle, and he makes a little chord, and then he asks him a riddle, and I don't off the top of my head remember what it is. It's what bell chimes? What bell makes no sound, but when the angels hear it, they're happy, or something like that. And this ties back to a couple hours earlier when Lily's singing Jack one of her songs. It's about it's like a parable about a guy that he falls in love, and then he just dies underneath a tree, and then bluebells come up to symbolize his death and his everlasting love, and they chime to the angels or something. So he remembers that, and then he's like, bluebells. And then Gump does the Rumpelstiltskin, where he like throws himself on the ground. He's just doing this crazy tantrum, and he's screaming in Elvish because it like subtitles in Elvish upset or whatever. And he's just getting really mad, and he starts going riddles. And he sits up and he's like, okay, fine, you bested me, Jack. Like let's toast to that, And then they pull out the elderberry wine, which is, as I say, that makes so much more sense, and is that whole like you don't follow after Fae, you don't get taken away with them. Your time can just slip away, or they'll just play games, and their games are deadly, and what they think is funny is probably going to kill you.
Right. And so Gump is way more formidable. And I have to say this, both Dave and I agree that the best actor in this entire film is the little kid who's playing Gump. And it's funny because Gump had to be dubbed over because the original actor had like a very thick accent, and it was hard to understand what that actor was saying because of that accent. And so that's why they dubbed over the voice. But just his actual presence on the screen, and especially this one scene, is just so fantastic. And it's such a shame that not very many people get to see that in the U.S. at least.
Yeah, he's kind of Pan coded.
Right, right.
This, the god Pan, not. We don't know what he's into. He looks like if he had little goat legs or something, that would be spot on. I think for what this is meant to be.
Right. It's meant to be more like the European elf creature from the Fae.
And they wouldn't have wanted to go like, oh, well, we give him goat legs, and then also Darkness has goat legs, and then now he just looks like Mr. Tumnus from Chronicles of Narnia.
Right. So they trudge through the woods a little more. They come across this glowing pool of golden light. And they get closer, and it is the unicorn, the downed unicorn missing a horn, and its mate is like circling it and kind of mourning it. And Jack asks it for forgiveness, and then it turns and walks away. And the team is now worried they're cursed. What are they going to do? And they say, we must get the yellow chrome back, is I think how they describe. If I heard
the
that
alicorn. Alicorn is what they say.
Oh,
alicorn.
Okay.
And the alicorn is just the horn itself. They have to get the alicorn back.
Okay. Did not watch this with the subtitles on.
Right, right. And in the scene in the director's cut, Jack is listening to the unicorn. It's a longer scene, of course, and Jack is listening to the unicorn who is speaking to him. So that's how he knows what to do, is because he can understand the language of the beasts, and that's why he can come back and report what's going on. And in the US version, it feels more, at least to me every time I watch it, felt more like he just knows by magic what's going on. So
Yep. And to continue the Zelda stuff, Navi here, his little fairy, leads him into a forest, and it's dangerous to go alone. Here, take this. And they find all the treasure, all this gold, but in there is this set of golden mail and a very impressive 80s fantasy sword for him to take as well. Da-da-da-da!
Yeah, well, so it's important to know that Gump can't go in there because there's iron, and he's an elf. And so the Fey folk can't go in there. But since Una is a sprite, she can take him in there because she's a fairy. She's not of the Fey, proper. She's a different type of entity. And also when she's in there, Jack doesn't just automatically accept, oh yeah, I'm gonna take the, sword and all this stuff. She is like tempting him. She's like, I can give you anything you want. You need to help us. And then that's what causes him to go ahead and do the thing.
Yeah, this is where I think this is the first time, as I recall, there might be a flash of her full size in the theatrical cut, but here she becomes full size, and Jack acts surprised that she could do that.
Yeah.
And we see her, and she's very like fairy looking. She's got butterfly wings and stuff. Like it's, and
the contacts making her eyes really bright. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she's I can be anything you want me to be, even your heart's desire. So she's got a thing for him. Again, Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, like we're kind of seeing. Yeah. So Lily goes into the woods. She finds a different cave, and she hears Blix celebrating, that they've got the horn and he's got the power. He lights one of his friends on fire. And the pig guy says something like, let's turn everything into a mountain of slop. Like that's what he wants is like just a trough full of garbage. Yeah.
Yep.
And then this like, they toss a guy down a chasm as again, there's more like infighting, and darkness comes in at this point.
Right.
We don't see him very well, but he's there.
He's in a big cloak is the thing. And
Yeah.
so he looks sort of like the shadow of death because it's this big billowing cloak that's just like got wind, its own little fan behind him, blowing the wind so that, it'll buff it around.
Yeah. And this is the classic, the henchman fucked up because darkness basically says, well, did you kill the unicorns or what? And they say, yeah, we did. It's like, well, only one of them. Here's a horn. That's pretty good, right? And he's, not good enough.
Wow. Forgive that intrusion, great lord, but goblins are inclined to be outspoken, and I like to encourage their initiative.
The unicorns are dead. Is this not true?
True, lord. Very plenty true.
Undeniably true.
You lie. Here is dawn.
Stallion is dead. Dead as dreams.
Out with it.
The mare lives still.
Even one unicorn walks the earth. My power is not complete.
She's just a female, lord. She has no power.
Only the power of creation. Get the mare. I command you.
Well, that whole scene also has, there's a little bit more in the director's cut, but both Blix and Blunder are talking about taking over from darkness and branching off and controlling stuff instead because they have the horn, so they have the power. First Blix, and then when darkness shows up, Blix is like, oh crap, and accidentally throws it. Then Blunder picks it up, the guy with the helmet, and he's like, hear me, fiend of darkness, and whatever. And then he ends up, thrown down the chasm because, he's blasted by darkness, who gets the horn back and everything. So.
Right. This is, again, that he talks about, as long as there's one unicorn walking the earth, then
my power is not complete. The sun is rising. Mm-hmm.
Right. So we watch one of these dwarves. His name is Brown Tom. Strange name. I assume that comes from folklore somewhere. He's hanging out with the unicorns, and Lily arrives, and the unicorn spooks and runs off, and she cries and apologizes, and she warns them, goblins are coming, and they start firing arrows at Tom, and he blocks them with his frying pan.
A ninja.
Yeah, actually a ninja. And I'm trying to remember, is Brown Tom the one played by Billy Barty? No. Screwball is the one played by Billy Barty. Okay, we'll get to him.
Yeah.
Those are the two dwarves, Brown Tom and Screwball. But yeah, Brown Tom takes an arrow to the hat and falls down seemingly dead. Mm-hmm. And Lily runs off during this. And when Jack and Gump find Tom, and they finally revive him after kind of debating with him that he's not dead, because it doesn't hurt to take an arrow to the hat. And he tells what he saw.
Well, so here's a couple of things. Lily doesn't run off. She and the other unicorn are captured by the goblins.
Right.
And then Brown Tom, it's not that he got hit, because you see some red stuff trickling down his face after he gets hit in the hat. And then what it was is that that's where he kept his elderberry wine, is under his hat on top of his head. And that was what shattered, making all the red stuff come down his face. And, you know, like the dwarves in the US version are entirely like goofball characters, because he's like, oh yeah, she was alive still when they killed me and stuff like that. They're goofy. And they're still goofy in the director's cut, but there's also serious parts that they have that are completely excised. So you don't get the serious stuff that the humor is couched in. So they just seem like, you know, comic relief.
Yeah, they're very comic relief characters. I mean, you don't bring in Billy Barty to not be comic relief, because he's awesome. He's been, we've talked about him at least twice on this podcast. He's in, he plays Noodles in UHF. And he is Gwildor in Masters of the Universe, which is another 80s fantasy thing we didn't mention yet today. So, yeah, go ahead.
And he's in Willow. He's the grand, I don't remember what he's called, but he's the wizard mentor.
Right, in the village of the Daikini. He's like the head guy. Yeah. The chieftain, or whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
Yeah, funny guy. He's since passed, but he's a lot of great roles under his belt. So they see the great tree, our team of heroes here, and we're told that the wicked go
It's
there.
only a model.
It's only a model. Yeah. And the wicked go there to sacrifice stuff, and the heroes have to creep forward into the swamp, the watery swamp that surrounds this giant tree. And they tell Screwball has to go first. So he thinks he made it, but he's dragged under by a banshee.
This tender morsel, disturbing red Mucklebone's rest.
Jack. They call me Jack, ma'am.
And what a fine fat boy you are, Jack.
You don't really mean to eat me, do you, ma'am?
Oh, indeed I do!
Yes, but that would be a shame, because someone as fair and lovely as yourself, Miss Meg, deserves far better than scrawny me. Don't you think?
Yeah. Think me fair? Do you, Jack?
All the heavenly angels must envy your beauty.
What a fine meal you'll make. Be the rest of you as sweet as your tongue.
Wait! Fill your soul with loveliness! Feast on the beauty of your reflection. You are an angel, Miss Meg. Look. Look!
What a splendid idea.
And I love the design on this banshee creature. Just, yeah, Rob Bottin just knock it out of the park with this like giant skeletal hag.
Yeah, Meg Mucklebones, played by Robert Picardo.
Oh, I saw his name in the cast. I didn't know who he was. All right.
He was Meg Mucklebones. So, yeah, this scene is way longer in the director's cut. How about Dave talk about this one?
Okay, so initially when Jack armored up and he has a sword and a very shiny, cool shield, and is also shiny armor. He goes to rescue Screwball, and when he does, he's kind of holding his shield up, and we get Meg pops up out of the water and is entranced, like scratching, kind of looking at the shield, and then turns and starts talking to Jack. And they have a few exchanges. It goes on for a little while, and then she's like, "Okay, you look like a tasty boy, and if if the rest of you is as sweet as your tongue," because he keeps complimenting her, then you'll be a tasty meal indeed. And he's like, "Okay, hang on, hold up on the chowing down. I think what you want to do is admire yourself a little more." And so he he basically offers the shield as a mirror, and she picks it up and she sits there and she's like, oh, I am a tasty super hotness. And she's just like admiring her face in the mirror, and she keeps looking at him and she's like, oh, you weren't kidding. Oh, look at this. And, and then he eventually uses that moment of her distraction to like lop off her head.
Right. And this is one of those times where Jack is lying his ass off. He's sweet talking Meg Mucklebones and saying a bunch of stuff that he obviously doesn't think and feel. And she ends up being felled essentially for her vanity, because she's, like sitting here and whatever, and then, gets it. So.
I'm glad that there's a longer scene there, just because Robert Picardo is so charming as an actor.
Yeah.
Like, bring him in to do something like that. I bet it would be great. Yeah, he's only come up once, I think, on this show. We talked about Inner Space, and he plays a very weird character in Inner Space called the Cowboy. So yeah, like after, at least in the theatrical, after Jack lops Meg's head off, he like has this moment of like, I did it. Like he's he hasn't done combat before, so this is new for him.
Well, it's kind of important because earlier in the film, Jack is like, oh, well, we have to have, we have to find a champion who's pure of heart and this and that and the other. And then Gump is like, you'll do. And like, it feels more like settling in the director's cut version of it than it does in the US version. Cause you're like, oh, he's a budding young man. Of course he's going to be the champion. But like in the director's cut, you're kind of like, yeah, he's just kind of making do with what he's got,
So yeah, he gets that information from Jack does from the unicorn. The unicorn's like, oh, she said that we have to find this champion, pure of heart and innocent and
strong of spirit.
Yeah, strong of spirit. And he's like, I don't know what we're gonna do about that. There's just us here, and where are we gonna find that? And then Gump's like, yeah, we don't have time for that. You'll have to just do. You're the biggest one of us.
Right. So we get a shot of the unicorn, the living unicorn, inside the great tree, like chained up. And Lily wakes up in there and kind of takes stock of her surroundings. And we see the Dark Lord's glowing eyes for a second, and the unicorn looks terrified. And we cut from that to Screwball kind of sliding down in the snow. And he presses down on this branch, and this like rock they're all standing on crumbles, and it dumps them down a chute into a cell.
So there's a couple of things about all of the stuff with Lily and the Realm of Darkness is way more extended in the director's cut version, of course. And when we get to some of the stuff that she does later, we'll have more time to talk about that. But like when I was little, I always thought that thing that Screwball was pulling on was what caused the rock under them to shift, but it's actually just a hanging thing, like a hanging rope there for the goblins to pass over this chasm. And you see that only in one of the deleted scenes, which sets that up. And that wasn't in either version, either final version. So instead it looks like he's pulling it and then, drop the rock out from under them.
Yeah, like it's a trap or something.
Right. And he just messed up by pulling on that thing. But yeah, they dump into the cell, and this is a little bit different in the director's cut version. So Gump is like, because there's more emphasis on magic, and like in the beginning of the thing, Nell is talking about, the magic that we have to be able to whittle this wood and do this other stuff that we do. And then you'll find your magic one day, talking to Lily. And magic is kind of like, everybody's got magic in this. But like Jack is talking to Gump and is like, Gump, do something, open that lock. And, Gump tries, but it's iron. And he's like, iron is bad for fairies, for fae folk. I can't do anything about this. And it's a little bit longer of a scene overall.
And the fun thing is when they're doing, Gump walks over to the lock and he does like a little cantrip, and it does like a little, like a sound effect of magic, like this little thing, and it just he's like, and he goes to touch it because it doesn't open, like he's expecting it to just open, and he touches it and goes, it zaps him, and he's like, oh yeah, this is iron, I can't, my magic isn't going to work on this thing. And then that's how it turns into the whole, like, well, we have to figure out some way to do it. And Una had wrestled a promise, basically, from Jack to not reveal her secret of her embiggening to anyone. And
so when he suggests
that, because he's like, oh, well, just have Una go do it. And Gump's like, she's so like, she's like, that's really stupid idea, Jack. She's very tiny. She can't lift that key. And Jack doesn't say anything else immediately. He's about to, and then Una pops up and she's like, you just like, you undid my secret that I was keeping. Like, that was just for us. And she gets big and gets really mad.
And that's true in the theatrical version as well. That, yeah, exactly. The suggestion is, what, Una, you go get the key. And yeah, this leads to her getting real angry about it. And she says, you got to kiss me. That's the price here.
I'll do what you ask. If you'll kiss me, Jack.
Easy enough.
Call that a kiss. I know it's sweet.
Sweeter than bee pollen on a summer wind.
Sweet is the wind that blows me to you.
It's very magic.
Lily? Lily?
Yes, Jack.
This isn't real.
Oh, it is. I'm warm and alive and want to be in your arms.
Yeah, she's like, I'll do it, but only if you give me a kiss. And then he's like, okay, easy enough. And then he just gives her like the quickest little pop kiss. And she's like, you know, you call that a kiss? Am I not sweet? And then he starts lying his ass off again and is like, no, sweeter than bee pollen on a summer wind. And, you know, like, he's very flowery with his speech when he's lying his ass off, like way, way ridiculous poetry. You know, he's trying to speak to these people. But yeah, and it's very funny because all of the elves are just kind of like, the elf and the dwarves are just watching, and they're just like, ooh, they're like watching their stories on TV, basically, you know, watching their telenovela or whatever. And anyway, she glams herself up to look like Lily, and he's like, what? Is this real? Because again, he's very innocent. He's almost like drawn in by this and almost, you know, confused, but then he shakes himself out of it. He's like, no, this is just fairy glamour. I can't do that. Human hearts don't work that way. And then Una gets mad again, and she's like, what care I for human hearts? You know, soft and spiritless as porridge. And then she goes into little baby fly form, and then buzzes off, and then Gump gets mad, like, you've screwed us all. Thanks, bro. But then Una comes back with the key. There's a little bit longer of a sequence in the director's cut version, and we also skipped over Blunder. I'll get back to Blunder in a second. Let me just finish with Una. So Una opens up the cage only after a little bit of, you know, cajoling from Gump, but then she slams the door back on Jack and is basically like, you can just rot here, whatever. I mean, she doesn't lock it, but she slams the door back to emphasize that she's so pissed at him. And before that, though, we end up seeing Blunder, which is the one goblin guy with the one goblin hand that was trying to stand up to darkness. I've got the power, and then gets dumped into, you know, this chamber. And he tells them, oh, they're going to eat us, and we're all screwed up. And then, you know, like, all of the Fae are you know, intolerant of him because they think he's a goblin. And then he takes his helmet off, and you find out, no, he's actually a Fae folk. And they're like, well, what happened to you? Because he's got a goblin hand. And he's like, well, it doesn't matter anymore at this point, but, you know, I went looking for adventure, and I found way more than I could, you know, I bit off more than I could chew, is his explanation. And something that happens to Blunder throughout the rest of this story is you find out he's a Fae. As the story progresses from this point, his skin progressively turns greener and greener and greener because he's turning into a goblin. And there's also a line that Gump says to Jack earlier in the movie, which says, well, if you like give your heart over to unfeeling, if you stop caring, then you will turn into a goblin as well, because he is a fae, Jack is a sort of fae folk as the Green Man. And of course, all of that was excised from the US version. So like, you just see this character turning green over time, and for some reason has a goblin hand, but is otherwise a fairy folk. And you have no idea why, and it's never commented on. Nobody talks about it, and he's just green for some reason.
And that's the case in both the US cut and the director's cut of this film. So it's in the deleted scenes that we find that Blunder had given the unicorn hair to Darkness. And when he did so, that's when his hand started turning into a goblin hand. Mm-hmm. But we don't have that in any of the cuts.
You do have a little bit more of the explanation of, I bit off more than I can chew, and he's, slowly turning into a goblin, but you don't know what originally was the impetus for that. But then they get out of the cell.
Yeah, I was confused too. It was like, if he's not a goblin, why is he hanging out with them at the beginning of the movie? What's he doing there? I was not explained, so I just had to sort of just chalk that up to go like, okay, this is, knowing there was a second cut of the movie, like this had to be something that got excised.
Right.
So they leave their cell, and they go through tunnels of stone and steam, basically, and they decide we're going to split up. Gump and Jack are one team, and the dwarves are the other team. And
they in the director's cut, they synchronize, and they have little things for like their time telling thing. Like Gump has this little sphere which he brings out later in the movie that you see in the US version. Only once, but in the director's cut, you see that they are synchronizing by these little devices, and in Gump's little crystal ball thing that he's got is his timepiece. And so when you see that a few times in the US version, that's what that is. He's looking at his clock, basically.
Okay, so this leads to a scene where I suspect you've got a lot to say about what happens next, because this felt also slightly incomplete. But we've got Darkness watching smoke go backwards into a fire, which is cool. They have that shot in reverse. And he's talking to someone who's not there, this whispering voice that seems, from the way the language comes out, is his father. Mm-hmm. And the father voice is chastising him for being obsessed with the girl who's distracting him. And he says, she fascinates you because her soul is pure. Change her spirit, hypnotize her, set her free, meaning turn her to the dark side, basically, is what is being discussed here. But I imagine there has to be more in the director's cut about this unseen being.
Oh, it's different. So it is still an unseen being. You don't really get like you see like a starscape and some kind of thing in the starscape. And it is his father, but he's saying, I haven't been fascinated with anybody like I've been fascinated with this woman since I first saw her. And there's still that element, but he's like, what do I do, Dad? And then his dad's like, seduce her? What do you think? Like, how do you think I got your mother? That kind of thing. And so it's a little bit different of a take, because there is no emphasis at all on Lily being pure. None. Zero. Not at all. It's just, manipulate her and then you can have her, and then that'll be, what it is. Conquer her, in this way or whatever. So.
And he just adds like, make her one of us, and then she'll be one with the dark side, and then you can be immortal together in your land of darkness. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, it was interesting because they until this point they hadn't introduced even the concept really that darkness was not like kind of a singular force of evil, that like he has a father who's like basically telling him, hey, you're hitting puberty now and you're gonna have some thoughts. Like it's
right. Weird. Well, at the very, very beginning of the film, when you first see Tim Curry, I believe the very first thing he says is, Mother Night, fold your dark arms around me. And he has this whole line that he says in the very opening of the movie. But like, you think Mother Night like abstract in the US version, so it doesn't seem like he has a father. But like in the director's cut, in that first scene, he's talking to his mom a little bit more. And so later on, he's talking to his dad. And like, he has a direct through line to, these off-screen parents of his. Yeah,
very kind of Greek mythology a little bit too.
Yeah.
So, So we get a quick shot of like Screwball and Tom kind of wondering if they saw something, and then they get trapped. And then
There's a little bit more that's like serious couching around that, but then, then it's just the goofy part in the US version.
Right. And we see Una, who spots Lily down this hall of gigantic columns.
Yeah.
Think kind of like the Moria sequence in Fellowship of the Ring, but they're, instead of like being like kind of angular, they almost like the bases of giant chess pieces. Like this set must have been really something. Because it's all practically done, and it is incredible looking. And so Una follows Lily kind of at a distance as she's making her way down this. And Lily goes through these double doors that Una does not follow through. She's just sort of peeking through a crack in the door. Although in theory, she could just transform into her tiny version and probably fly right through. But for now, she could peeking through.
Yeah. Right.
So Jack and Gump explore this dark cavern, and a bunch of scrub enemies, goblins, like spring out of the ground out of nowhere. And we've got this quick like fight between them. And eventually they don't win this fight. They just escape and get behind a door and brace it.
I have to say, I love the shot of Una creeping up to that double door with the light behind the door, and like, you see the camera panning up from behind her. Like that shot is very memorable to me for some reason. Like I love that particular imagery.
It's spectacular. Like everything in that set with those giant columns is just mind-bending.
When Lily's running too, it's slowed down a little bit, so you can really appreciate like the flow of her dress and her hair as she's kind of like almost floating through this scene.
Yep. All right, so Screwball and Tom find the unicorn, but we cut away from this quickly, and it's Lily by the fireplace, and she hears this voice calling her over to this table full of like golden treasure. And in particular, there's this like conspicuous like music box sized chest. And she opens it and pulls out this glorious diamond necklace. And she turns to see this feminine, again, Dark Souls ass boss monster kind of twirling and dancing. You never see its face, but like this was awesomely creepy. Like kind of thing of like, well, I didn't know what to expect in this movie. So just like comes out of nowhere and is like really menacing and like visually striking.
So this sequence is longer in the director's cut, and there is no voice calling Lily anywhere. She just turns and sees the shiny things and goes, and like her face does like the greedy face, and she goes over there, and that part of the greedy face still stays there in the US version, because when she's like after she's opened up that chest and gets this gigantic diamond studded thing, she's holding it up in front of her face, and as she's lifting it up, her smile comes up, but that she's lit from underneath in such a way that it looks real creepy. Like you can tell that she's turned to like evil greed at that particular moment in that setting and with that face. And it's like her face as she's walking up to it is also filled with like this, these are all the baubles I want to have, and this and the other. And they cut all of that out. And then with the dancer, it's the same sort of thing. She has this sort of like seduced look on her face, and, starting to be like, like enthralled and like under a spell sort of thing. And you only get a little bit of that. Mostly you get like the doe-eyed look that she has, and the dancing that she does with this character is way longer as well. She's dancing all over the place and really just like getting into it and everything. In the US version, that's cut down to she's being danced around and looks like, like a Bambi, basically, after losing mom, just like, oh my God. And then she twirls a couple of times and suddenly she's in the outfit. But like it's a way longer sequence during which she's luxuriating in this darkness that you don't get at all in the US.
Yeah, they do waltz for a bit before, and it is literally like a waltz type music that Tangerine Dream has in the background of this sequences. Yeah, all of a sudden she twirls, and it is, as you said, now she's in this black dress, and we have like dark Lily, and it's like where she's gone from this like very like kind of white, innocent thing. Now it's like this, think Maleficent kind of look, plunging neckline, giant like spiky things at the collar, really cool, striking design.
Mm-hmm.
And Darkness's like beckoning hand emerges and
from a mirror.
Yeah, out of a mirror. Like, and basically he's in the room now, and they're gonna have their little tete-a-tete, like, join me.
Lady, do not be afraid. Quiet. Quiet. How like you my gifts? Does the gown not please you?
No.
Can you speak so of your bridal gown? I've found my true mate. And you know it.
Never.
Beneath the skin, we are already one. Was it not your sin trapped the unicorn? Even now, the evil seed of what you have done germinates within you.
No. You lie. You disgust me. You're nothing but an animal.
We are all animals, my lady. Most are too afraid to see it.
Yeah, I'll leave if you guys have some stuff to say. I imagine this scene's different too, or is it not?
It's longer, of course. Everything in the director's cut is longer because there's like 25 extra minutes in the director's cut version versus the US theatrical. So a lot of extra stuff. It's a longer scene, and it kind of spends more time showing off Darkness's body. So like showing like sexy fake muscles and stuff. And then his entire exchange with Lily, which I think comes a little bit later, has a different vibe to it as well. So we'll get there when we get there. I don't think they have that yet. I think we cut back to the other characters, right?
Not yet. We have some discussion about like, she's his true mate, and we're both the same under the skin, and you and I are not so different.
Yeah, that's a longer sequence where, it feels way more convincing in the director's cut version of it. That she's like enjoying all the stuff that he's giving to her, and he's like recognizing, he's like, oh yeah, I gave you all of these things, and like all of this other stuff. Dave, do you have anything on this?
So in the director's cut, there's no other emotion aside from like civility. He's being very civil. He's quiet. He's just kind of considering, and he's like, I just want to sit and chat. And she's like, oh, about what? And he's like, no, we're just pleasantries. Just sit with me. Sit down in that the chair. Just have a sit down.
Yeah. I think that part's a little later.
That's a little bit later.
That's a little bit later, but like
say it.
At this point,
like, go ahead, stand then.
At this point, though, he is he's civil. He's a lot calmer in the face of what Lily is saying. In the U.S. version, he seems kind of unhinged because she says no, and then he just like rages about it immediately. But like in the director's cut, like he's kind of more amused and a lot more patient with her, and is just kind of working to seduce her more.
Yeah, and I think we see that our heroes are watching this from behind the door now too. They've joined Una, so they can see this. Mm-hmm. And he says, the last unicorn dies tonight. The sun sets forever. There'll never be another dawn. And he says, sunshine is my destroyer. So now we know. Okay, we know it's kryptonite. And Jack remembers that Lily had this necklace that was kind of reflective. So speaking of Zelda, we're going to do a mirror puzzle. Right. We're going to set up they had all of these. They discuss with the dwarves, who were like, I say, we just run for it. They go down to the kitchen where there's a million of these giant reflective silver platters. Yeah. Yeah. And so they set about stealing those. So they're going to set up a mirror relay.
So if the sitting down part happens a little bit earlier, the thing with the director's cut is that when he's saying sit and talk with me, he keeps on emphasizing sitting because she looks at the chair, and in the director's cut, as she's looking at the chair, the seat of the chair starts to bubble up and turn into like it's going to, if she sits on it, it's a trap. It will engulf her in darkness and do something. So he's trying very hard to get her to sit in it so that she can be, caught in this web, this trap, this additional thing that he's doing. That's why he gets mad in that one part. But there's also a lot more discourse between them where he's saying all of this other stuff to her. And like the line where he says, "Oh, I offer you this rose, princess." The princess in the U.S. version sounds like a pet name at this point because she's a lady, not a princess. But it's literally a princess in the director's cut. But it's couched in a lot more discussion and a lot more nuance in him offering himself. So that line doesn't seem so weird. But when we get to the silver plates, Dave, you said that you never realized those were plates.
Yeah, I mean, I watched this primarily when I was a kid, so I just thought they had a bunch of big frisbees or something.
Well, at one point they throw one like it's a frisbee.
They throw it like a frisbee, and I used to watch National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation a lot, so I just thought that was maybe a sled, and he was gonna grease it up with this special oil. Just go sliding down real fast, but instead they reflect the sun. And the other fun part is when they make that relay, there's no way they don't test it with anything. They just go, this angle looks about right. And I'm just thinking about the logistics of that, going all over, we built this thing all over the palace to reflect lights. And you guys didn't check any of these angles. There's no way that's going to line up.
Oh, and something else that we forgot to mention is that Blunder, the fairy who's turning into a goblin in the cells,
he's in a pie.
Before the cast. Well, because he gets carried off by, he's like, oh, he's coming, hide. And they all hide and everything. And then that's after that point is when the jail keeper guy or the giant or the demon or whatever comes and takes Blunder away to go eat him. And then when he's carried away, that's when there's the whole conversation about, have Una get the key and this, that, and the other. So just have to throw that out there because they have to free him during this whole sequence out of a pie, and then he has to be recruited to help out with all of this.
Yeah, I was confused. What's he doing in there? Why is he there at all? It was very weird.
He was carried away, and you see that scene in either version, the U.S. or the director's cut. That he says he's coming, hide, and then they all hide, but then the demon guy happens to grab Blunder and drag him off to the kitchen to cook him.
Yeah,
so
we get a good action sequence here because they end up accidentally making enough noise with their operation to wake up the kitchen staff here.
Screwball catches one of the things and then falls backward into all of the other plates, and then they all clatter, and that wakes up the big giant guys.
Right. So we have this fight, and then Jack is kind of resourceful enough to let loose. There's a big thing full of water that he dumps over,
it's a stock pot with a bunch of bones and stuff on the fire. It's a massive cauldron that's boiling. So when it does that, it pours over them and scalds them, but then the whole place goes up into steam because then they get steamed alive. And you don't see the bodies, I don't think, in the US version, but you see them in the director's cut completely steamed alive, got steamed hams here.
Yep. You call them steamed hams despite the fact they were obviously grilled. So I love this. They need somebody to go up onto the roof to where the sun is going to be for the first mirror bounce of this solar relay, right. And Screwball volunteers to climb up the chimney and do this. And at first,
Dave didn't even know that was the chimney for a while, but after they put out the fire, then yes, they're up in the chimney trying to go up the chimney to go up to the roof. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And so this is where we get this scene, at least in the theatrical, of Darkness and Lily. And he's asking her, yes, please sit. I want to talk.
Oh, okay.
I'd prefer to stand. Right. And he's like, oh, we have nothing to talk about. And this is where they get this thing of like dreams, like you've stolen my dreams. And he says, dreams of youth are the regrets of maturity. Dreams are my specialty. That's how I influence humanity, is through their dreams, because I'm the Lord of Night or whatever.
Yeah.
You've stolen my dreams away.
All things change, lady. The dreams of youth are the regrets of maturity. Dreams are my speciality. Through dreams, I influence mankind. My dream is of eternity with you. I offer you this rose, princess. My heart, my soul, my love.
Love?
And you said, this is the princess thing. And in my head, I just kind of went like, oh, I guess she's a princess, and they hadn't mentioned it before.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, she's set up as like a noble lady, but not as a princess in the U.S. version. But then he says, I offer you this rose, princess. And I don't know, it always read to me like a pet name or something instead. But anyway, this whole section is longer, and like the chair, the throne that he's trying to get her to sit on is very creepy. And she actually is about to sit on it, and he's like, oh yeah. And then she stops and looks at it, and it's like reaching up for her butt, and she's like, oh no, never mind. So
I like that because in the theatrical cut they don't make it. I mean, the chair is awesome in terms of its design, like everything in this movie. The aesthetics are off the chart, but there was nothing about the idea that like the chair itself is like,
animate and going to do stuff. Yeah,
it's just a cool looking chair. Yeah,
right.
That makes sense. He continues this. He says like, eat with me, and he this glass fills itself with this black liquid. Here, drink this. I'm like, no, it's gross and creepy. But what she says she'll do, they bring in, she says, grant me one wish. I'll stay and chat with you. I'll stay, but if you let me kill the unicorn.
Right. And the part where he's trying to get her to eat with him actually is earlier in the director's cut. They did a weird thing where they added that in later into the thing. And then that's where she's like, I do nothing for your pleasure. But that I do nothing for your pleasure line is actually related to her not sitting or whatever. And I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to do whatever. But the whole... He was trying to tempt her with the feast. He's like, look at all this stuff. It's delicious. You must be hungry. And, all of this other stuff. So like he's laying it on pretty thick, throughout the director's cut version. But yeah, she's like, oh, I'm going to kill the unicorn. And I believe, isn't it like, doesn't Jack see this too or not?
I think so. I can't remember if he's working on the mirror relay at this point or if he's watching. I can't tell from my notes. But we get this like speech from him about, in the beginning there was nothing, a void of darkness, and this perfect void was corrupted by light, and blah blah blah. And basically they realize they need the light to come in now. What's going on, and so they send Una to go fly up to where Screwball is and see like what's what, and he's fallen asleep.
Yeah, Screwball is asleep up top. And that scene is, of course, a little bit longer, but it also includes a bunch of monks. There's dark monks in the room with Darkness as he begins this ceremony, because it's a sort of like quasi-religious ceremony that he's performing where he's about to do this in front of his minions and stuff. And yeah, Screwball's asleep, and so Una's trying to wake him up, and he's out, snoring. And so she's trying to pick up that plate, and that's not working for her either because she's not strong enough to get it. So a little bit of a struggle.
Well, and this also leads to this like moment of like, take the shot, because Lily's going to seemingly kill this unicorn. Gump has his bow and arrow trained on the scene from, a sniper's nest basically. And
right.
Jack
with Jack.
Jack. And he's like, no, don't do it. She's not actually going to kill the unicorn. I trust her.
And so like Jack is like, no, I'll do it. And then Gump's like, well, you have to do it now. And at first he's like, judge her with her heart, not your eyes. And then he's, they're both training their arrows, and he's like, no, Gump, I'll take the shot on Lily. Don't worry about that. And then he says, I trust you, Lily, and moves it, and then moves his shot at the last minute, and then shoots Darkness. And then she frees the unicorn by breaking the chains, which that takes a lot of force. So that was magic that she was able to break that.
Probably. She's not particularly beefy.
No.
So, yeah, she breaks the chain. The unicorn gets free, and then Jack screams, "Darkness!" And kind of swings down, and gets immediately just knocked to the side.
Yeah.
And we have our fight between them now. This last duel here, which it's cool. I like the idea that he's not really, again, he's not a combatant. This is not his thing.
Right, and that's very obvious here because in all of the fight scenes so far, you've got Meg Mucklebones where he's like, "Oh wow, I did it through trickery," and then like against the big demon guys in the kitchen. He's mostly jumping around. He somersaults everywhere. He's jumping around and somersaulting around. And like, he does take a punch, punches the guy in the face or does a few, kicks him or whatever. But like, he can't physically overpower them because he's not a warrior. So instead he has to use his brain, and he has to, like use this, big pot to scald them alive is what he's got to do here. And so like with Darkness, he's like way, got the big Dark Souls boss in front of him. This is like final boss of Elden Ring kind of material that he's dealing with here. And he is just like barely able to hold on to his sword, loses his sword at one point, that scatters off all kinds of stuff. And the horn goes flying, as a matter of fact, as well.
Right. And so we go cut up briefly to the rooftop where Una is trying to solve this problem. And she can't, even in her human form, she can't lift the plate, which is kind of odd. I mean, they were throwing these things like Frisbees a minute ago. But anyway, she's struggling. And Jack sees the unicorn horn. It's about to fall into like a pool of water. I thought this was lava because the way
it's on fire. It's on fire.
Like
there's fire on the top of it.
And there's red lighting everywhere. It looks like a pool of like lava. So I was like, oh, this is it. The ring, the horn will be gone for good.
The ring, yes.
Sorry.
No, it's from Kroll. It's the dang shuriken.
Yeah. And so there's this line. Yeah. Every wolf suffers fleas. It's
easy enough to scratch.
Yep.
Every wolf suffers fleas. 'Tis easy enough to scratch. Give it to me, boy. One. What is light without dark? I am a part of you all. You can never defeat me. We are brothers, eternal.
Do it, Jack! Kill him! Kill him!
Yeah, and I love it because he's very much enunciating with his entire mouth as much as possible during that point. But also I want to note that Una was not throwing any of those plates earlier. She was like off watching what was going on with Lily. She wasn't throwing the plates. Those are only the guys doing it. So this is just like, oh, she's a little girl. She can't pick that up.
Yep.
That's what that was.
But now we get our kind of our killing blow here, because Jack grabs the horn. He stabs Darkness with it just at the moment they get the plates into the right position, and he gets struck with the sunlight. And he's like blasted into this like think void. Like when void, like think the end of Alien, right, or Aliens. It's gonna get blasted out into space, sort of. And he's hanging on, and he screams something like, "Father, protect me!" And he gives a big old, you'll never get rid of me speech.
Right. And he's got the horn in his hand, and he's like holding on and like trying to use that to keep himself upright as he's being pushed back, like being sucked basically into this void of space. And eventually he just like drops it, because Jack, like you see the silhouette of Jack with the light behind him, and he picks up his big sword, which is way too big for him, and then takes a big slice at Darkness and cuts his arm. And that's why like the horn drops, is because he gets hit in the arm with the sword, and then he slides off into the darkness and then winks out, very much like Alien, as a matter of fact.
Go ahead, Dave.
He bursts into like 5 stars, like
Dragon Balls.
Yes, 5 Dragon Balls. You have to assemble them back into darkness.
Interesting. I don't remember seeing that in the theatrical cut.
Yeah. It was there. It was there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It looked like little stars, like going off into different directions when he winks out.
Well, the movie definitely leaves open space for a sequel if there was going to be one.
Right.
But yeah, so he says something like, "We are brothers eternal," or whatever. Yeah, and he swings the sword. He falls into the starry void, as we said. And Lily is still, she's not back to normal yet. She's still in her darkness outfit.
She's passed out, and like, so in the director's cut version, Jack is like, "Gump, do something, Gump," and then Gump turns it back on him and is like, "No, like, this is something that only you can answer. You've got to find the answer to this riddle. What about all these things that you've done so far, Jack? Like you have the ability to do this on your own. This magic is magic for you. This isn't my magic that needs to fix this. You figure it out, bro," is what he basically says.
Yeah, and he says something like, "Don't forget us," which is
because
why?
Yeah, and he says, and that's because like it's much clearer in the director's cut that they are only temporarily going to stay together, because they are the Fae. They're going to go back to doing their Fae business. They're not going to be hanging out and be buddies and bros forever. It's not that kind of a thing. The Fae go to the Fae world. They go to their own thing. So yeah, it's time for us to leave. Don't forget us.
Yeah, that felt very out of nowhere. I'm just like, why? What's going to happen? They didn't set out any rules of like, once you do the thing, then forever we shall be parted. Like, there was no setup.
Right. And so like they have to go back and go put the unicorn horn back on, because Jack and Lily can't do it, because they're the people who messed it up in the first place. It's got to be, like the Fae folk fixing that.
Yeah, and there's a couple lines earlier on in the director's cut that show that Gump not only is he an elf and not one of the dwarves, he's not from there. He's from a different area. He's a foreigner to that land, and he just happens to be stronger and is guiding, he's gathering people to help.
Yeah. And so Jack takes the horn and he goes back to the pool, and he dives in and he gets the ring that has been there.
Yeah, he doesn't have the horn when he jumps into the pool. He's just,
No.
I think the horn is actually with Gump and the Fae folk. But Jack has I guess he found her dress somewhere and put it back on her, changed her clothes, because now she's back in her white gown and she's passed out asleep in the forest. And then so he goes and jumps into the pool.
And he grabs the ring, and the world is green and beautiful again. And he puts the ring on her finger and kisses her. She comes back to life. Gump puts the horn back on the unicorn, and it comes back to life. So they're both revived, Lily and the unicorn, at the same time. And there's unicorns frolicking and kissing. There's the pollen is back everywhere. And there's this song called Loved by the Sun, which comes in. And the singer is John Anderson of Yes. Because I was listening to it, I'm like, this voice sounds very familiar. Who is this guy? And so, yeah, it's like Roundabout. What's the one I really like by them? Shoot, I'm blanking on the name of the song. Oh, I've Seen All Good People. Great song by them. And I guess he sang, I don't know if he sang, there was a bunch of other songs, as you mentioned in the movie, but I think there are Lily singing most of them in the director's cut, right?
That song that you're talking about with the guy from Yes doesn't exist in the director's cut at all. None, they entirely different, completely different soundtrack. Not even one thing is similar between the two of them. And it's Lily singing. And this whole scene is very different in the director's cut. So
yeah, let me do this. I'm going to tell you the end of...
Yeah, you say the ending of the US version, and then we'll backtrack.
Yeah, there's technically 3 endings to this. So the ending of the theatrical cut is, again, they're revived, they're frolicking, they're kissing, whatever, and they run away towards the sun, just into the rising sun. They wave back at all of their fae friends who are off in the distance with the unicorns, and everyone's like, yay! And they run away, and then we get this short shot of darkness cackling, kind of superimposed over them, implying that he's never really gone for good, and then credits. The European cut of this movie, yes, there's a third one we haven't even talked about yet, has no shot of darkness at the end. It just ends with the purely happy ending, and then I'll let you guys go with the director's ending, which is different.
So the director's cut doesn't have the part of darkness at the end. However, when Jack puts the ring on Lily and kisses her, she starts to wake back up again, and she sees him there, and he's like, I love you, Lily. And she's like, I had this bad dream. And then she reaches up to touch his face, sees the ring on her hand, and is like, oh. And then she's like, was all of that real? And he's like, you're safe now. And he's just like expectant and really joyous, because he's like, now I get to marry you. And then she takes the ring off and says, you know what? You can keep this, and you can think of me because it's kind of like a part of me. See you tomorrow. And so she basically puts him back in his place and says, I'm a princess. I didn't think you were actually going to get this ring out of that pool of water. I'm not marrying you, bro. But you can stay my fuckboy. And he's like, okay. And that's how that ends. And then like when it's going off into the sun, it's only Jack walking into the sun. Lily done left. She went away, and it's just him by himself walking into the sun, waving to all the fae folk, and then the movie cuts from there. And that's the end of that. Like, he goes back to his forest and continues to have his little dalliance with Princess Lily, who has not, she's like, oh, I learned a lot about myself, and is one of the things that she says. And then, like, she's like, nope, not gonna do it. Bye, Jack. And he's like, okay.
I'll always have Una, I guess. Oh no, burn that bridge.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna ask Dave, like, because this is wildly different from the theatrical ending. How do you feel it squares, with the themes as they are laid out in the director's cut?
So the themes as they are laid out is that, yes, we have the balance of good and evil, light and darkness.
But it's within every one of the characters.
It's within every one of the characters. Each one of them is symbolizing like a vice as well as a virtue. And because of that, they don't ever get rid of their vices. The lessons they learn, like the lessons that Lily learned, is like, well, I'm kind of set in my ways. I'm a bit selfish, but I've learned I'm not inherently evil. Like, I didn't want to kill the unicorn, and I've also learned to own up to my mistakes. So I made this mistake, and I'll do what I can to make it better. And by that was like just setting the unicorn free. I didn't go fix the other one. He's dead. I guess I should just not, if I'm gonna steal things, leave no witnesses. Like, I don't, she's not a good person. And then for Jack, the lessons he learned really is to like believe in himself, and probably shouldn't be so gullible, but he didn't really learn that one. He just learned that, okay, if I'm capable of more than I think I thought I could be. I'm still not good enough to get with the princess, I guess, but she'll be back tomorrow, so I don't have to worry about that yet.
It's a much more complicated, set of like story beats and emotions in the director's cut. Because basically the director's cut is we're subverting fantasy tropes.
Yes.
And the theatrical cut is we're doing the tropes.
Well, this is why I say that the U.S. cut is an act of propaganda, because it's cutting out all the vices of all the characters and making them just, like these iconic, simplified, basic things. And I say all the vices, also the virtues of darkness are taken away as well. Like all of his more attractive qualities are gone out of the US version, and he's just like the evil guy. And like they take all of those nuances away, and they just, give you the propaganda machine of, no, he's the innocent good guy and she's the innocent good girl, and they're going to be together forever because, fantasy and all of that stuff. And they simplify it to where like, no, the light and the darkness isn't in all of us. It is, those guys are the light guys, that's the dark guy, and then they have a fight, but the dark guy will still be around somewhere, kind of thing. So like there is no setup for a sequel in the original version at all, because it's just everybody is all of these things all the time, and that's what the practical point is for the thing.
And what you'll have to worry about really isn't darkness, because darkness was scattered to the 5 winds in outer space, but there is Prince Blix, because go ahead.
Winning, Blix wins the day. Blix brought the unicorn horn, so Blix got his princedom, we may assume. Blix is the winner because they never end up fighting any of the hero characters. Blix just deuces out and is able to go do goblin things elsewhere, and is still good to go at the end of this movie. So hooray for Blix.
Yeah, it's interesting. This happens every once in a while where there's a movie and then there's a director's cut, and 99% of the time the director's cut is just slightly longer. There's more stuff, like look at, to use another Ridley Scott example, Blade Runner. Like the director's cut of Blade Runner is not radically different from the theatrical cut. It's just a little cleaner. It's a little longer. And it makes a little more sense, but the story isn't fundamentally different, right? This is really interesting in that there are truly like 2 completely different movies, that like the Venn diagram of where they meet is much smaller than you think.
And not only that, but the original screenplay and the original iteration of this was way different also. So I'll just tell you a few things. So Ridley Scott considered making this a dark horror movie. I think I said that already, with graphic violence, gore, and possibly even darkness, assaulting Lily. So, and having sex with her. And this has changed to, in his iterations of this, it changed from that to a suspense movie, but then it turned into this adventure movie for the American cut. And then, like, say, for example, the hill of rock that Jack is climbing when going to stop darkness from killing the unicorn was originally going to be a pile of rotting corpses, but they cut that for budgetary reasons / because of, wanting to dumb down the movie from the original hardcore version they were going to do. Also, Lily was going to have like this slow transformation into a sort of cat-like creature who, then is like whipped and ends up having sex with, darkness and all of this other stuff. So like, again, a harder version of what we ended up getting, where she's just in a dark dress and everything. Like she doesn't have this whole physical transformation scene and all of this other stuff going on, but it was going to be way darker than what they ended up with. And I think the artifacts of it being this darker iteration, like the way that the dark world, the great tree and everything that's in it, and Blix and all of this other stuff, all of these elements make this a far more memorable movie for me, because like those stand out in your mind as being, not so canned and safe, even though they took the cut of the movie and turned it into a canned and safe kind of movie. It's kind of interesting. There were also some scenes in the original script that were never filmed. Lily meeting a house brownie like the one in Willow. Lily, again, turning into that humanoid cat creature. Darkness was supposed to grow big bat wings in his fight with Jack, but for budget reasons, they couldn't manage all of that, technical and budget reasons.
Hey, Tim, want to put something else on?
Right, exactly. Like they just said no to that. And also another, like they were going to have a final revelation at the end that Jack is actually immortal, probably in that fight with darkness. He probably didn't, he might have gotten mortally wounded, but then not actually died and all of that. And then also another thing they were going to do was have the unicorn taking darkness down after the sun sets, meaning the light trick used to send darkness to his doom would have failed and he would have still been there and alive because it would have happened after the sun had set, because it was right at sunset when they managed to get that light trick to work. So pretty wild, some of the changes from the original script and how hardcore the original script was versus what we got. And then even director's cut over to the US version, completely different movies. I mean, like, they're both good movies, they're just very different, and the director's cut is very nuanced and has all these different elements to it, a lot more dimensionality and subtlety to it, versus the US version, which is kind of like your popcorn flick of easy to watch fantasy, high fantasy stuff from the 80s.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're here at the end, so we can kind of start doing the final wrap-up thoughts on it. But, like, one of the things I noticed about this is, first of all, it wasn't a huge success at the time. Flopped, but it's maintained kind of a cult status. Part of that's because of the famous people in it and involved with it, that if anyone's going to go like, oh, I want to go look at other Tom Cruise movies or Ridley Scott movies or whatever, eventually you'll see this on the list and watch it. But even when there's like a movie that, I mean, this is a problem child of a movie. It is disjointed because of all of the constant revisions, I think, that that happen to it. It's an imperfect product, but a very fascinating and interesting one that, like, I thoroughly enjoyed watching. So, Dave, kind of your kind of final summation on Legend.
It's basically that same thing. I really recommend, if people have the chance to track down the director's cut. It's just the both versions of the movie. They've released a few on 4K and Blu-ray that are like from Arrow Video, which they do fantastic work as far as putting in extras, making sure like the prints are as clean as they can be, remastering the audio, which some of that may be a minus. We did notice that there was some artifacting, and like you can really notice in the director's cut that Tim Curry's voice lines as Darkness had a lot of post-processing like effects added to it to make it more voluminous, and it's booming and has more bass, where I think it felt in the original just part of the character. It's a film, a cult classic, as you said, kind of for the ages, because you get in total, watching both versions, you get a really good sense of what was going on at the time as far as like acceptability for certain tropes. Like if you look at US release films, this is when it's a little bit after when they implemented the rating system, and the 80s in particular were where they were kind of fine-tuning it. And there's a lot of films that are PG-13, for example, at the time, but if you tried to watch them now, you're like, no, that's an R. Like they you can't say those things in that sort of rating system as much anymore. And some of that is something here where as kids, or as anyone growing up in the 80s, you're exposed to these shows and these movies, and they become formative because they don't always go to the lowest common denominator, and they're treating the audience appropriately, in as much as like what's going on screen and the themes are they're not always just hand-fed to you, and they're not just like Saturday morning cartoon-ish. There's more nuance, there's more depth to the characters that I don't think these days there's a harder line between like, this is media for families, this is kids media, this is like adult media. Then it was just like, here's some stuff that's on TV, and if you're lucky, like the TV edit just replaced like you get a hard dubbed in line of like, oh no, the my toaster. You know, they just put some weird thing that didn't fit with like what was going on because they're just dubbing over like curse words.
Jala, how about you?
Well, I already said at the top that this movie, the U.S. theatrical version of it, was something that was really formative to me as a kid. And then when I got to see the director's cut version of it several years ago, when I finally because they had released the director's cut on a DVD some number of years ago. Then that went out of print for a while, and Arrow picked it back up pretty recently, I think it was, and then re-released it again, and has the rights for that, and that's something that you can easily access these days. But for a while, it was like hard to find. You couldn't even get the director's cut, unless you happened to buy that exorbitantly priced, used DVD off of eBay or whatever. But like seeing the director's cut made me appreciate it much more, actually. But I appreciate both versions of the film for what they are. They just serve different purposes, and their audiences are kind of like a different pool, I feel, in a way. But they both are things that are definitely in the pocket for stuff that I like. It's got a lot of elements and ideas and things that resonate with me and always have. So definitely for the U.S. version, part of what is doing the heavy lifting to where people have such strong nostalgia, as Dave mentioned previously, was that Tangerine Dream soundtrack. I wish more people could see David Bennett, who is the actor who plays Gump. I wish people could see more of him in terms of like the rest of his performance, because a lot of that got cut out of the US version. So you miss a lot of his really solid acting as a child actor. Fantastic work, hands down. So, like Dave, I would urge people to try to find that director's cut. The Arrow release has so many extra videos and so many behind the scenes and commentaries and all kinds of stuff that's really great.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if you've only seen one of the two versions, you haven't seen the whole film. You almost have to see both of them to really appreciate this kind of chimera that it is. But yeah, I'm really glad you brought this to the show, because this was a great time for me to dip into it. Like I said, a blind spot and a very interesting one. So thanks for bringing this to the show. So guys, if people want to find you, where do they find your stuff?
You can find me primarily through monsterdeer.monster. I'm also on BlueSky, but our contact stuff is just, you can link it through the website easy.
And you could find my primary show at Jala-Chan Place. You can find The Level Podcast at duckfeed.tv. And if you want to reach out to me on social, I am on BlueSky at jalachan.rights.fyi, because I changed my handle. So...
And I'll put links to all of that in the show notes, of course. If you want to reach out to us, that all our social links are in there. We have, this is one of 3 podcasts I now have going. So our other show is Playing by Ear. That's one I do with my wife and brother-in-law, which we're a music show where we take an album each episode and break it down track by track. And then I partnered up, if you go to patreon.com/stillloadingpod, partnered up with my friend Josh Koval from the Still Loading podcast to do a monthly Muppet show. So we're doing Still Muppeting. That is, we're doing all of the mainline Muppet movies. We'll be doing Labyrinth of the Dark Crystal and like Muppet Babies and some episodes of the Muppet Show and some other related things over the course of that. So there's 2 episodes of that out now. There's the one on the original Muppet movie. We did one on Muppet Christmas Carol. We took that out of order for December. We also put that on the Nostalgium feed, so you can get that one gratis. And then this month will be some episode of the Muppet Show that, as of this recording, Josh has not picked which one yet. So there's a lot of good Muppet stuff on that to go do if you want to hear that. If you have time and are so inclined, please do drop this podcast and Jala and Dave's podcast and any podcast you listen to a review, because reviewing podcasts does good things for that podcast and makes it grow and helps more people find it. But also equally valuable is word of mouth. If you liked it, tell a friend. If you didn't like it, keep it to yourself, and be at least do the kind thing. So anyway, that will cover all of that stuff for this time. Thanks again for dropping by. We always love having you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Same. Always a pleasure to be on.
All right, guys. Until next time, that is one more entry in the Nostalgium Arcana.
Once or twice eyes, well, I knew they had a reason. Enchantment plays its cards all right, hand in hand with the workings of the seasons. Legends can be now and forever, teaching us to love for goodness sake. Legends can be now and forever, loved by the sun, loved by the sun, loved. Two and two, though so close together, whether there is hope that is torn apart. In the words of all that's singing, hand in hand, the beginning is at the start. Legends can be now and forever, teaching us to reach for goodness sake. Legends can be now and forever, loved by the sun, loved by the sun, loved. Who sings of all of love's eternity? Who shines so bright in all the songs of love's and every spell?
Every wolf suffers fleas. 'Tis easy enough to scratch. Give it to me, boy.
Okay, flaming dragon. Fuckface. First, take a big step back and literally fuck your own face! Now, I don't know what kind of pan-Pacific bullshit power play you're trying to pull here, but Asia Jack is my territory. So whatever you're thinking, you better think again. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to head down there, and I will rain down on a godly fucking firestorm upon you. You're gonna have to call the fucking United Nations and get a fucking binding resolution to keep me from fucking destroying you. I am talking scorched earth, motherfucker! I will massacre you! I will fuck you up!